I'm glad to see so many of you, even though it's a bit early still, and the last day of the festival. We have this seminar today in collaboration with Europa Distribution, and we are very proud and content with our collaboration partnering. And it's the second year we have a seminar together. And I would like to introduce Christine Eloy and give the word to her.
Thank you. So indeed, it's a nice collaboration for us. It was very important, as Europa Distribution is the international network of independent film distributors, many Europeans and some non-Europeans also. And the idea of our association is to create, of course, a network between independent distributors, voice their concern at a more international and political level, but also create a space where they can discuss topics that are related to distribution, and of course promotion and marketing is one of the most important ones. And we do that in the scope of different film festivals, which allows us also allows our members also to participate to the activities of the festival and discuss things that are also linked to the festival. So of course in August the topic had to be Scandinavian films. We won't speak about Spanish movie today. Last year we did a case study. So we really focus on the release on RAMs, essentially. And this year, for a change, we decided to have a broader approach, more about circulation, which is, of course, a very, very important topic generally, but with a focus on, of course, Scandinavian films again. So together we have built this very nice panel. We are very, very happy with it, that will now exchange about their own experience, because of course when I was mentioning this exchange and sharing experience, it's based on the experience of all these people, distributor in each country, and maybe like the experience of a Czech distributor may serve then a German distributor, which experience may serve a French distributor, etc., and Belgian and UK in this case. We have other distributors from other countries in the room also. So the idea is really that you can pick ideas also from the others, so that actually you have new tools to do your own job. That was for my short introduction, and I pass the word to Wendy Mitchell, who you already all know, and who has accepted to moderate it. Thank you. Thank you all, actually.
Thank you. It's great to see so many people here. I think the seminar was titled Scandinavian Film for Beginners or something, but I know you're not beginners out there in the room, and I think we can have quite a high-level chat here today, and would love for you to interact as much as you want to with the panel and ask questions, not just at the end, but if you want to just raise your hand at any time if you have comments, because we've got just as many experts out there as we do up here, I think. So feel free to chime in. And also just to reassure you that we'll wrap in plenty of time for you to walk to the work in progress, even if it's raining. I'm Wendy Mitchell. I work for the British Council in the film department, but also I'm a contributing editor at Screen International, where I cover a lot of the Nordic film scene. So I'm really happy to be here and happy to have these experts that Europa Distribution has brought together. And we're going to look at the distribution of Nordic films in different parts of Europe and maybe a little bit beyond. And maybe some bigger ideas will emerge that's not just about Nordic film, but about all films. I'd like to start by just asking the panel to briefly introduce yourselves, your company, and give us an example or two of a Scandinavian film you've worked on recently. So James, I'm going to pick on you first.
Thank you. So I'm James. I'm recovering. I work for Curzon Artificial Eye in the UK, and we do a fair amount, I think it's fair to say, of Scandinavian films. So most recently we released Force Majeure and A Pigeon Sat on a Branch, reflecting on existence, and all the Aki Kaurismäkis. So we're fairly familiar in that terrain with varying degrees of success. And I run the theatrical sales division, so I'm kind of on the front line trying to convince cinemas to play better films, basically. So, it's always a toss-up, Kaurismäki versus the Avengers. But that's how it is, even in the independent cinemas. So, yeah, that's me.
Okay.
I'll pass it on.
Great. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Marike. I work for a company called Lumière. We are based in the Benelux. We have offices in Amsterdam and in Ghent. And we are a production, distribution company. We have cinemas as well, 2 cinemas in Belgium, building a 3rd one. We have a small animation studio in Ghent. And we are mostly known in the Nordics because we do a lot of Scandinavian TV shows. We buy and co-produce around 15 to 18 shows per year, mostly Scandinavian. Co-produced The Bridge, for example, 4th season coming up. But we also do Scandinavian films. For example, also all Ruben Östlund's films. We've done Roy Andersson's films. We're working on The Square right now. But we've also done quite a few films that relate more to our crime shows, like Millennium, The Hypnotist, Snabba Cash, etc.
Good morning. My name is Vladimir. I work for the company KMBO, based in France. What can I say? We tried a couple of different things with Scandinavian films. We tried some Ruben Östlund film, but I stopped after Involuntary because it was not a great success in France. But I'm very happy now with The Square. It's going to change. We tried also other art house film as a Blind, directed by Eskil Vogt. Also, we did also a try with a comedy named Conquerling. I was very fan of the film. And also we work on animation film as Solan and Ludwig, The Big Cheese Race, and more recently one with very hard to pronounce the name Hockey Bucky.
Hockey Bucky.
Yes.
Forest or
Thank you. Thank you. And so there is different kind of release target audience we tried during those years.
My name is Matthias. I'm from Neue Vision in Germany. We are a distribution company. And we started our career as a distributor for Scandinavian films with, I think it was the first feature film by Dago Kauri, Noi Albinoi. Yeah. And distribute his second film as well, Dark Horse. We distribute and released the films by Hans-Petter Moland, A Somewhat Gentle Man, and In Order of Disappearance. We had the Roy Andersson films, his last second films, and yes, that's quite a lot of Scandinavian art house movies for the German market. Yeah.
Christina.
Hello, my name is Kristina. I work for Film Europe media company. We based in Bratislava, Slovak, and Prague, Czech Republic. We have office in Cannes as well. We do film distribution in theaters. We have our own TV channel as well, and we published a few DVDs per year too. My work is in film distribution, and one of the reasons why I'm here is that we have Scandi, a film festival for new Scandinavian films every year. It's been 3 years already. We use it as a help to introduce lesser known Scandinavian films to our audiences. Project like Sami Blood, Girl King, and stuff like that. We also have the Square, so we're getting ready for this. And if anybody interested, we do own the rights for Ingmar Bergman. So now we're preparing for his 100th anniversary next year. So if anybody's interested in that, it can be a topic too, but old-fashioned one.
Okay. Thank you. I wanted to start with a very big question, the obvious one, but I think it'll set the scene for why we're here today, is can you each look at, say, the last 5 years and see how the market for Scandinavian film has changed in your territory? Has it gotten bigger? Has it stayed the same? Can you even compare? from 5 years ago.
Thank you, I'm getting picked on today. I mean, I think obviously we had a brief blip with The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and that trilogy, which was probably...
The original language.
The original
Swedish,
language, you know, which were doing over £1 million in the UK, but that was maybe an exception. But then we've got a lot of sort of positive stories recently coming out. Obviously, Force Majeure was a huge hit in the UK, as it was everywhere, and we'd acquired the film for a very sort of modest fee with very modest box office expectations, and we spent accordingly. So we didn't actually put a huge marketing campaign behind Force Majeure. It was a very modest 15-screen release, and it was purely word of mouth that the film just grew and grew and grew and ended up grossing over £600,000, which is, you know, by UK standards, one of the highest grossing foreign language films of the past 5 years. So that's kind of a real success that everyone's looking to. And obviously now we're all working on the square. I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't think anyone knows how long the film is still, but, you know, everyone's doing it. It's,
Somebody knows out there?
It's the same length, yes.
Really?
Spoke to the producer.
Oh, okay.
They've done a bit of editing,
But same length, okay.
yeah, although it may have to be delivered in 24 frames per second, so it may end up being considerably longer. But anyway, that's irrelevant. And then, you know, we've had a couple of bigger successes with the Charismakis, who've gone from, you know, being... everyone here knows who Aki, obviously, but he started out being sort of a very modest filmmaker, and then Le Havre was a big breakout, doing over 360,000, and then The Other Side of Hope, albeit slightly less, it did about 271,000 in the end, which is still fairly good by UK standards, not as good as I personally wanted, because I absolutely adored the film, but I think, you know, Britain wasn't in the right moment to enjoy a good immigrant sympathetic drama. So I think there's a lot of good news stories in there, particularly for Scandinavian cinema, primarily just because of the strength of the filmmakers. And and then Roy Anderson's latest, A Pigeon Sat on a Branch Reflecting on Existence, or as someone in my company likes to refer to it, A Pigeon Sat on a Stool. I don't know why they do that. Again, it was his biggest grossing film in the UK. So these are sort of small victories, but we're slowly getting there.
Anybody else want to?
Can I talk about TV? Is that okay?
Yes, please, because I think TV fits into this quite
Yeah, I
well.
mean, I think the last 5 years, the Scandinavian hype came and went, basically. And that's not just television, that is fashion as well, that's music, that's design, that's people talking about cozy things like hygge
books and things.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
okay.
But I'm not sure if that had an effect on film, on Scandinavian film. I think in film there have always been certain auteurs, like the ones we have been talking about now, that will draw in audiences to the cinema. Maybe sometimes when there's an actor that people know from the very popular TV shows, that will draw people to the cinema. But I'm not completely sure. I think it has stayed the same. There will always be strong stories, and they come from strong storytellers.
Okay. What about in Czech Republic?
I would like to agree with Marik. Like in Czech Republic, there is a long tradition with the authors, even before the revolution. At the Karlovy Vary International Film Festival, we had like those authors' films presented, so Czech audience was familiar with it. Today, it wasn't done by our company, but competitive company, but they recently did the rerun of Aki Kaurismäki films in order to support his newer films, and those authors has been there, and I think the Scandinavian brand with the films resonate well with the audiences in general in Czech Republic. Like we were surprised, for example, with our last year's Scandi. festival. We opened with this drama Sami Blad, and it was beautiful. It got some awards, and we thought everybody should see it. But one of the surprises of the festival was Girl King. We thought it would be like for senior screening and stuff. It was about the Queen Christina of Sweden.
Mika Kaurismäki.
I don't think so.
No. Yes. Mika.
Okay,
yes.
okay. But it was a certainly film we didn't put any hopes in. But it's also like historical drama from Sweden, and audience reacted very well to it. And every year, like there is a few Scandinavian films which resonate well in the numbers of art house cinema. Of course, it's not major success, but within the area of art house cinema, the films resonate well for film clubs.
And in Germany?
Maybe in Germany it's a bit different because we can separate between TV and cinema. TV, for TV, especially all the thriller and detective stories works very well, and there are a lot of films, Scandinavian films, which are screened on TV. And in cinema, these topics and these genres, thriller, detective stories, doesn't work at all. But all the art house movies work very well in Germany for the art house cinemas. So, for example, I think A Man Called Over, I think it's the international title, made more than 500,000 admissions in Germany, and because of the successful book, maybe. But even the Kaurismäki films make 250 or 200,000 admissions. We made with Roy Andersson 130,000, and even Hans-Peter Moland with In Order of Disappearance made 130,000. But on the other hand, we can sell these art house movies to TV stations. So, and that's totally separated two markets. We have cinema, and some topics and some films work in cinemas, and on the other hand, we have the TV content.
Thank you. What can I add to? No, I was hearing the discussion, but. So, I was thinking about all the new directors, like director of the film Rams, also who was a big success in France, maybe in other countries. Also recently, Le Caire Confidentiel, I don't know the title, it's a Swedish thriller. Yes, which was also a big success. So it's and I would not say it from the last 5 years. It's more like from the last 10 years or a bit more. Great directors are Tobias Lindholm, Michael Nower, and so on were upcoming, and it's even now like production from France, like big production and TV, are maybe try to grab those directors to make their own production. There it was a bit the case with A War, which was produced with Canal Plus in France. So and also with the series like Borgen was sold to Arte. It's so yes. We right now the only feeling I could have is like much more distributors and TV broadcaster are really considering Scandinavian authors from the early stage of their project, I would say.
I wanted to bring up something that came up a little bit. It was just this idea of Nordic noir on the TV side, because I think in the UK that sort of changed when something like The Bridge or The Killing came on BBC. I think it sort of opened people's minds up to subtitled content in a way that they hadn't necessarily thought of before. But I think it still sort of stayed in TV. I don't think if you watched The Bridge, you're necessarily going to go see the new Roy Andersson film. Has that Nordic noir, Marika, maybe you can talk about, has that Nordic noir boom impacted the cinema, or that was just a TV thing?
I think it started with Millennium, actually. And that was, I mean, there was a hybrid. It was supposed to be a TV show, but then the books became so successful that they made 3 films out of it. So people went to the cinema and watched a Swedish film, and I think that opened up that whole language discussion. Also, it might be different in the UK. I think Dutch and Flemish audiences can really relate to Scandinavian languages. There's a tone of voice, a typical sense of humor that we can really relate to. But like I just said, I'm still not sure if the whole hype in Scandinavian TV has actually drawn people to art house cinema as well. Not sure about that.
Anybody else have thoughts of if those TV shows have helped? I mean, I think you're right, Matthias. I think especially if you have a Nordic thriller or any kind of thriller in a cinema now, I think audiences are sort of closed-minded to that because you can get the best thrillers in the world on TV for free. So why are you going to go see that in a cinema?
We actually, when we released, I'm not sure which one it was, but it was, I think, one of the Danish Q series films.
Department Q, one of those.
Yeah, Keeper of the Lost Causes. When we released that in cinema, we got so many bad reviews, and people said, "Why do we need to watch this in the cinema? We can watch this on TV every Sunday night." So there's a clear borderline.
Yeah, I was working for a different company to the one I'm working for now, and we certainly released a lot of very bad films, but off the back of the Nordic noir kind of TV boom that didn't translate to cinema audiences because I think a lot of those films weren't desperately good. But then you did have films like Headhunters, which was hugely successful in the UK, grossed over £1 million. I do think they sort of Momentum at the time released it and marketed it sort of not really as a foreign language film, so the classic trick being, you cut a trailer with no dialogue so there's no subtitles and then people don't realise it's a foreign language movie. It's a great trick, I've done it. Yeah, there was a lot of examples of failures, and a lot of Joe Nesbo adaptations came out and didn't do anything at the box office. So I think it's fair to say that it's really the strength of the film that is drawing audiences in, and if the film is good enough, people are coming, but you can't kind of flog a dead horse. Particularly with foreign language cinema in the UK, as I'm sure elsewhere, we're so review driven that a 2-star review for a film is just a kiss of death. You can't do anything with it because you're dealing with a sort of art house independent leaning audience that are completely review driven. And so you kind of need to get 4 stars or above in order to get those people into the cinema.
In Germany, I would say that even the Millennium trilogy and Headhunter, Easy Money, and all these films had no success in cinemas. The first part of the Millennium film, I think, made 50,000 or 60,000 admissions in Germany. But it was a huge success afterwards on DVD and on VOD, and after the TV screen. So I think these film noirs, the thriller content, that's a different target group, it's a different audience, and nobody or no distribution company that released these thrillers in the last year in Germany had a success and got it to reach the audience and to convince them to go to the cinema in order to see it there. So. But
do they work when they're sold to TV or on DVD a bit, or?
Nobody goes on VOD and DVD, but our problem in Germany is that the main TV stations
have no film slots.
No, they sell directly from Trust Nordisk the content, and then the distribution companies and come.
I think in Germany also had this issue with the films released on DVD in the home country before you managed to release the Dutch version in Germany.
Yeah.
But I think that was you sold with the last Norwegian film. I don't remember one Motlis film, if it was Hans Petter Moland film.
Yeah.
They kept their whole DVD release in Norway till you had released it in Germany, and that was a much bigger success because you skipped this piracy.
Yeah. So the comment was just that there'd been a problem in the past if you're
Because
if the yeah with piracy, if you could get the version out on DVD in Norway before you could see it.
And the dubbing and
How
the,
many of you are dubbing the films?
Yeah, who's dubbing? Anybody dubbing? Or
we have to. If you want more than 20,000 admissions in Germany, we have to dub.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
That-
We only dub for animation films, but not for the art house. We thought about for Conquerling, as it was a comedy, trying to get to reach a wider audience, more mainstream. But the problem is, like, if you try to get this audience, which is very competitive, you need some local casting, and so it meant for us much more a risk on the release. So we stayed on the art house, I would say art house release with original version, and it was complicated because for sure the art house audience in France is a bit older, looking for culture, and it was not really the the case. But what I feel is only my experience for France is it's not really the problem or fact with Scandinavian films. It's more with the audience. We can really share it in two parts. One is I would say the youngers with like teenagers, really looking for blockbusters, local comedies, and this kind of film. And the other part, which is a bit older, looking for art house films. And for sure, after it's a question also of topics of film. It's not that they don't want especially to watch thriller, but if I speak to my mother or my grandmother, she will maybe prefer some film with a dance topic, opera or whatever. So it's it depends also of the subject. After, when it's a renamed author as Joachim Trier, Ben Oslund, and so on, they will just follow the festival, the press critics, and they're not only Scandinavian directors anymore. They're just big directors. All the audience wants to follow. And it's so this is what I could say. For example, the Le Caire Confidentiel, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name again, is a thriller. It's a Swedish film, and it was it's more than 300,000 admission now in France. So it's huge, and it was a thriller. So
Okay. I mean, are there certain genres that you're thinking? We've also sort of mentioned that maybe thrillers aren't really working in cinemas. Is that true for everybody, or does something like a comedy like Ove, did that work in your markets?
Yes, I would say that Scandinavian humor translates really well with Czech audiences. So we do like the Pigeon on the Bench and even films like that, or Green Butchers we had a few years ago. Adam's Apples. It's like those comedies did really well. And just add to your previous question about the subtitle. We are subtitled culture anyway.
Yeah.
We don't dub. We have TV channel. We don't dub for that. And even Czech national TV, they dubbed most of the things. Obviously, they would dub a TV series, but the art channel of theirs, when they screen art house European films, they often subtitled even on the TV. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if all Scandinavian comedies work well, but if you look at films like The 100-Year-Old Man and A Man Called Ove, they, especially in Holland, did really well. But that's also because of the big success of the books, I think.
Okay.
And we subtitle in the Dutch-speaking territories, and we dub in French-speaking Belgium to make it easy.
Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about the cultural. We were talking about, you were saying, oh, the comedy translates. I mean, you're all from sort of the heart of Western Europe. We don't really have panelists today from Southern Europe. The films don't tend to do as well down south, I think. Maybe we can talk a little bit just about, connections you see with your own culture and that Scandinavian culture that comes through in these films that people are willing to connect to. Because I know, Marika, you were saying even in the north of the country, you might get more northern vibes than
This
the
is
south.
very, very micro, but we used to sell a lot of DVDs. And there's a shop in the very northern part of Holland, and Holland is such a small country, but there's a shop there that sells significantly more Scandinavian TV shows than a shop in the southern part of Holland, which is so weird.
But do you think it's something in dialect and culture and attitude?
I'm not sure who said it, but someone once says Holland is the most northern Scandinavian country, or the most southern Scandinavian country, and Belgium is the most northern Mediterranean country, and that's always how I try to explain the differences between our territories. Yeah, I think it does resonate more with the northern parts, yes. But you can see that. Is there anyone from the southern countries in this room?
Hello?
And what do you think?
I'm shocked at the comparison between Italy and Flanders, frankly. I don't get it. Okay.
In the UK, it seems like there's a lot of cultural touch points.
Dark,
to me.
dour, depressed,
Rainy.
Yeah. So I think
We've even got good Scandinavian bakeries opening in London.
exactly.
now.
I did a screening of Fanny and Alexander for Christmas. I had to explain to people why it was a Christmas movie, which made me want to kill myself. But we managed to get a Scandinavian bakery to give us some pastries, and we had 250 people turn up to Fanny and Alexander, which I was really happy with. So there is an appetite still out there.
Do you think that's always been existing, or has it gotten a little bit richer in the past?
It's very hard to say because obviously the Bergmans,
Yeah.
were huge hits back when he was still alive.
Yeah.
So I think it's when we're dealing with the art house market, it's just quality, and it's always got to be quality led, quality driven, and you look at all the successes, and they've had the reviews. So a film like Elle, which was very divisive, but it got 5-star reviews from the major publications, and then people flocked to it, even though it was in many ways a very problematic film. I mean, I found it very funny, but I perfectly accept that some.
We're going to intervene with you.
Yeah, some people didn't. They had huge issues with that movie, which I think is completely fair. But it got 5-star reviews, and so people come, and they come based on quality, and quality waxes and wanes, and that has nothing to do with geographical territories. But then, yeah, there are certain resonances, particularly with. The kind of sensibility, I would say. So dark humour works well in the UK, and as I imagine it does in all the northern countries, because we have a more sort of pessimistic outlook because of the weather. It has to be the weather, right? God.
Yeah, I think it also has to do with strong and real characters. People that we can all relate to, that are real, that are not polished, that have their own issues, etc.
I would also like to add to it that, when we thinking about doing Scandinavian Film Festival, you have to consider the question will there be each year enough films to substitute a festival, even though it's a small one? And to be fair, the answer is yes for the Scandinavian countries, because. Their markets each year present something. I don't say everything is great, but it's good enough. Every year there is something you're not ashamed to.
I think of the
there is a
funding for
consistency of funding. Because of this panel, I also looked into films supported by Creative Europe. Within the last 10 years, the numbers are around the same. Like how many films have been supported in Czech Republic? It's between 5 to 8 each year, which is a lot for a European region. In a small country like ours, and I would also like to add that there is a there is a lot of popular Scandinavian books, and the market is huge. And if you look in the book market, like even books are very well are selling very well, and they are targeted as a Nordic or Scandinavian thrillers or like from this region. And the funding as well as the funding is good as well. Like if you need a support for a film and you contact an embassy, not all. I don't say they like throw money out of the window, but they genuinely very supportive. All the Scandinavian embassies in Czech Republic.
And tell us, I want to hear a little bit more about the festival, and how many films does it show per year, and do you ever then release films theatrically after that festival launch or on DVD? Do you have the rights to some of those?
We do buy the whole package because we have a TV station. So we buy a lot of films. Not all of them necessarily are suited for the theatrical release, but not all of them are chosen to be published on DVD. But we do have the rights, and we use the festival. It's like 4 or 5 day festival, usually with like 5-6 premieres. And within the months after that, like most of the films, or all of the films had a theatrical release. Some has a hold and are released maybe a bit later, not to overflow the market, But the festival is a platform how to draw an attention towards those titles, which then are like ready to hit the cinemas.
And is that festival audience growing? Does it feel like that strategy of having a festival is helping develop audiences for those films?
Yes, the festival is growing like each year. We talking about like the way we do the festival is like we have it in Prague in 2 to 3 cinemas. With a section of like best of Scandi from the previous years, and then we send the package or maybe smaller amount of the film into the region with the brand Scandi, and the Scandi brand is on the posters as well, and it travels around Czech Republic like the week or 2 afterwards. So it's helping us marketing the films, which would necessarily do well if you send them just like that.
And for all of you, when you're marketing a Scandi film, I know it's going to be a little bit case by case, and we've already sort of established that maybe a film being by Ruben Östlund is sort of a name to open that film. But in general, are you marketing these films as being very Scandi? Are you marketing them as being by an auteur? Is it about cast? What works in marketing? Because the it's so crowded. To get attention for any single film that's being released? What's the marketing genius that we can use for these films?
For us, the main point is the typical dark humor. So we know that the director or the cast won't work and sell that the actors are not famous enough, and maybe Roy Andersson and Kaurismäki. That works, and we can't underestimate the influence of the early Aki Kaurismäki films and his impact for our imagine how the Scandinavian humor works, and that's 20 years after. We still have the same pictures and images and the same humor, dark humor and characters, and want to see them always.
Do you think that's a good thing?
Yeah, and so that's why we in our marketing we try to point out this special Scandinavic humor. Surreal characters in funny situations, and that's the main point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this sort of when you want to really break out a film, I think you have to. We've got this sort of older, established art house audience that you almost don't need to market to at all, because they're regular cinema goers. But when you want to break out a film, I guess it's about reaching a younger audience, which is obviously something people are always obsessed with, but it is important. And you kind of have to think outside the box, I think, when you're trying to reach that younger audience, because they're not reading the newspaper. They're not, it's a completely different mindset. So we've been, with varying degrees of success, experimenting with, certain techniques that will reach a younger audience. So for the latest Aki Kaurismäki, there's a fantastic video essayist, if that's even a word, on YouTube. He's a guy called Lewis Bond, who does Channel Criswell, and he does these 15-minute video essays. And I got to know him through doing the Tarkovsky project, which we re-released all the Tarkovskys last year, and it ended up sort of snowballing and becoming a big success and grossing over 200,000. And he did an essay on Tarkovsky and ended up getting over 800,000 views. I mean, we didn't have that many people in the cinema, but it was great. Yeah. So we started working more regularly with this guy, and he did an essay on Kaurismäki called Hopeful Cynicism that we released in conjunction with the new release. And whilst it didn't get 800,000 views, it did get over 60,000 views, which is more than we traditionally get for a trailer when we release it online, because it's a bit more interesting. Like a 15-minute video essay is more interesting than a trailer generally, and so it's kind of trying to think slightly differently about how to do things. And two of our most recent foreign language successes, Victoria and The Handmaiden, which is the highest grossing foreign language film in the UK over the past 5 years. We worked with Secret Cinema, which is a very sort of UK specific thing, but they combine elements of immersive theatre and then they screen a film. It's not to my personal taste, but it's something that people really enjoy. I imagine people who work in brand awareness or something. I don't know. It's not really very cinephilic, but it does reach outside of that cinephilic audience, which is the whole point. So you can make a film like Victoria or The Handmaiden seem cool and trendy, and penetrate a slightly younger demographic by sort of working with the tools which they're operating in. And the Secret Cinema examples, I think we genuinely saw a palpable impact on the box office, because word of mouth is always going to be more effective than any other marketing tool. And if you've got a bunch of, I'm not going to use any rude words, a bunch of people going to one of these events and they have a good time, they get drunk, they somehow watch a film at the end, then they go and tell their friends, oh, I saw this great film, had subtitles, but whatever, and then their friends go to the cinema, and that on both of those releases we did see a real positive, palpable impact on the box office, and I think that was to do with those events. It's kind of about thinking differently.
And anything special planned for the Square? I know you already showed it at Somerset House.
Yeah, we showed it at Somerset House. We will. Somerset House is a. It's where they used to do like all the birth, deaths, and marriage certificates, but it's
like a very historical building.
Historical building, but it's a square.
And it's an arts center.
Anyway,
they do outdoor screenings in the summer with Film Floor.
So I guess we were really thinking outside the box on that one. But we will inevitably do something with the Square, but we've pushed back our release to March because we missed, because the re-edits and stuff, we missed
the re-edit
deadlines.
That's the same length, Annika tells us.
Yeah.
And do you think, with the Square, for all of you, do you think winning the Palme d'Or at Cannes, does that, on a day-to-day audience, when we're going to decide what we're going to see on a Friday night, does that make any difference to a normal audience? Doesn't hurt.
No. There's a few examples, I think, of films, like Winter's Sleep won the Palme d'Or, but still didn't quite, it's a 4-hour Nuri Bilge film, so you're just going to be operating in that market. But then a film like Uncle Boomy, Who Can Recall His Past Lives, which is basically an art film, not an art house film. Yeah. I mean, it's a fantastic film. But I think, the Palme d'Or did get at least an art house audience into that film rather than purely just, esoteric
artists.
artists.
I think, well, we've had one other Palme d'Or before, and that was quite a flop. So,
Which film was that?
it was Deepan, which we unfortunately released, I think, in the weekend that the refugee crisis really broke out. So people saw that on the news the whole time, and I don't think they wanted to go to the cinema and see a film about the crisis. But with Ruben's films, with Tourist, he already has proven that he can get that weird universe that he has in his head, he can make that accessible. And people know him now. And I think with a filmmaker like that, the Palme d'Or will really elevate that to a different level. Yeah, let's hope so.
Any other special marketing that you've done that helps?
What about being at Calivare or in Berlin?
Yeah, do those festivals, does a Carlo Vivari launch help you?
With the Karlovy Vary, it's a specific question because it's very well attended by locals. And last year we had a great success with the film Tony Erdmann, and Karlovy Vary helped hugely with that because there is a lot of cinema fans, and we have a Czech film database online, which is this huge platform where people can review the films, and it's those reviews can do damage or help to the film. So in that sense, it can help. But with some titles, we were, for example, we decided that we will not put the Killing of the Sacred Deer there because we thought it's such a polarizing film, and if they didn't manage to get a director or the main star there, and without this support, it can damage the film. The word of mouth is really strong coming out of Karlovy Vary, so we put it there only when we are absolutely positive.
When you're sure.
It will, but it can help, and there is quite a few festivals going on in Czech Republic, and in general they're quite helpful. So we use it a lot. We have our own festivals. We have four festival per year, 3 smaller ones like Scandi, and 1 bigger one when we present where we present the main films, like The Square, the films which did well in Cannes, Venice, and Berlin. And you simply use the festival to enhance the good word of mouth. Yes, definitely helps.
I'm thinking of something in Berlin, In Order of Disappearance was quite a very well-received film there. Is that where you picked it up? Did you build from that?
No, we
had it before.
We had it before, but it helped a bit. Yes, but actually, this film wasn't the right film for the Berlinale competition. But on the other hand, it was in this year. It was such a poor and depressive competition, and then In Order of Disappearance, it was a comedy. Maybe with no sense, I don't know, but it was a real pleasure for all critics and industrial people to see the film in the competition after 5 or
all these
7
depressing films, and you get something with a bit of life in it, and it really pops.
whole audience was laughing, and it was that was a success, and. It's clear this film can't win a bear or something else there, but the word of mouth and the feeling about the film, that was different after this screening, and that helped a lot to get the cinemas and the critics on board. Yeah.
Vladimir, you talked a bit before about this sort of new generation of Michael Neuer, the Tobias Lindholm, and there's some interesting younger directors coming up. They're not younger anymore, but if you have, say, a debut feature filmmaker, is that really hard to market in France? Or, I mean, I think the critics there would also love to champion a new talent. So how do you market or get publicity for a film that's from a new filmmaker?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
No, it's complicated to. I don't want to say it's the most complicated things to introduce a new director. It's true that for us as a size of company, it's a bit our work, in fact. That's what we did with Eskil Vogt. With Ruben Östlund, it was not its first film, but the first to be released in France with Involuntary. I'm thinking about others. Maybe also others, I don't know. And yes, it was difficult, and what it's a bit funny is like they were not very well considered by the French critics.
They were not.
Not, which are sometimes very a pain,
Yeah.
but it's no things are changed. But it's not relative, of course, of the Scandinavian directors. It's for all.
For all films.
Yeah, exactly. And about what you said, like the curiosity to bring and so on. Sometimes it can happen, but it's you know, you make some press screenings, no one is going there. It's a difficult job for the press agent to bring attention after. Yes, when you have a Cannes Film Festival and so on, it can be a good extra for as it's in France, critics are there. Theaters exploitants are there because they are very important, sometimes much more than the critics. And as they are sometimes a bit lazy, it's good for them to watch a first film. So Rams was the first film, and it did great success. So sometimes it can work. There is no rules.
Not one rule for everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you think the Uncertain Regard Prize helped Rams in France?
No, I don't think so.
No?
I think it's more a question of marketing and also good timing for a film release. Because we have a very competitive market with 15, 20 films each week. And if you don't choose the right time, after it really depends on the kind of film you have, if you need press, if you need to have a more massive number of print and so on, you're going to choose different time in during choosing your months to release. And if you're not in the right time, you're kicked out easily. So Rams, everything was perfect on time. So
What time of year was it released?
no, I'm not a distributor of Rams, but it was ARP, and they did it well. And subject was not easy to introduce but sometimes it works. So.
Yes, Stina?
I think it is also quite impressive that you're releasing Scandinavian children films or family films in French cinemas.
Yes.
Yeah, family films.
That's something new.
Yeah.
Because we have been selling children films for years, but more for DVD or TV.
In fact, in France it's a bit specific with the children film. We don't have anymore the culture of the live children films, except on TV. So film with like a render speaking and so on. I know it can work maybe in Germany. I think there is distributors, or when you have like a pet speaking or this kind. But for us, you can only do this with animation. And we have strong and established things with education to image with the school. We have a lot of school screenings, and if you have like the right film at the right time, it can really be a big success. After the point is those films are released in only dub version. We tried from the past with, for example, Moomin to get also like original version with subtitle for adult, I would say, but it was really not very small in terms of box office. So it stay Scandinavian, but sadly we erased everything and it became as a French animation film. But we try with event to launch a film, to make partnership with the embassy, with everything like candies, food from Norway, Sweden, whatever, to introduce also the original books. But it's complicated. For example, with the two last ones, there are also books. They're based on books, very popular in Norway. We were trying very hard to find some publisher, but it was very complicated. So nothing happened.
Matthias, you were saying last night that family films are quite tricky for you, or certain ones? Or?
Especially for us, yeah.
Yeah.
We tried 4 or 5 times to distribute family and children films and failed totally. So I'm not the right person to ask how to release children or family films in Germany. It's very, very hard. Normally, children films work in Germany if there's a big marketing budget. That means films are coming from Hollywood and had a multi-million marketing campaign, or they are based off of a famous book. And
it's already sort of a franchise with
that must be a franchise. You can't introduce new characters for children in cinema. That doesn't work.
Marike, do you work with kids' content?
No, that's not our core business either. We've done a few non-Scandinavian. I think we've released Shaun the Sheep in cinema. So
and no dialogue. That's an easy one.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great.
No, I do think children's content is becoming more and more important, not just for cinema but also for digital distribution, because there's been a lot of research. People sign up to certain platforms for TV series, films, etc., but then they stay because of children's content.
Yeah.
So there's quite a hunt for good family content right now.
We haven't talked a lot about digital platforms. Do you see that changing? I mean, there's obviously always been this talk of the long tail, that if I'm the one person in southern Italy who loves Finnish comedy, I can find it digitally, and that's quite easy. I mean, do you think that the digital realm is changing audiences? Is it growing and encouraging audiences for foreign language content? Anybody scared of Netflix? Do you love it?
The whole VOD market in Germany is getting more and more complicated. So, and if we talk to Netflix or Amazon, which are the biggest SVOD player in Germany, they consider our films, and that means all Scandinavian films. That is no content for Netflix and
don't want it.
Not at all. Maybe they take it as extra, but they don't want it, and they don't spend money for it. So, and then you have the other platforms, iTunes, Amazon TVOD, and EST VOD platform. Then, and that depends from the success in the theaters. So if you have a big success in the theaters, you can sell it on iTunes as well. But you have no chance to sell it without a success in the theaters. So.
Yeah, it's interesting, everything that's happening, isn't it? It's not boring, at least. For film, we're not in a good position at the moment, because I think everybody in this room here knows that we're losing the whole long tail. So you need to make back all your money in the theatrical window nowadays, because everything afterwards is becoming, well, it's almost disappearing. We used to have output deals with all our pay TV stations in the Benelux. We're losing those output deals for films, but they keep buying TV shows. With the free TVs,
Free TV doesn't have slots for films.
Yes,
mostly.
Also because they want to do more TV, which is in a way good for us as well. And then there's all the asphalt platforms. They do buy more and more films. We are, by the way, we're an all rights distributor also for TV, so I deal directly with Netflix and all these platforms in the Benelux. I looked up some figures, and until today, this year, we have sold 128 films to asphalt platforms in the Benelux. Some may be double, etc. So 128 deals and 71 series. But in turnover, so 65% of all my deals is films, but it's only 13% of the revenue that we get from asphalt. And that is what's happening right now. They don't pay for films. They only want to pay for TV. And also, I mean, I'm both in a good and a bad position because I have TV shows, because they come to me, they want my products. But then they wait until the very end, until they say, when they have all their TV programs, well, in the pockets, and then they buy films. And they pay not much for it.
Not much.
No. That's an issue.
Yeah. Oh, we've got a question in the back. Do we have a roving mic, or can you shout?
Yeah. I was just wondering, time-wise, because series are longer, does that work out as the same as film? Because, you might get more, you say it's kind of interesting because you get a lot more revenue from TV, but if those TV shows are 10 times
Obviously, but still, it's what I get paid per episode is much more than I would get paid for one film. And sometimes those episodes are 90 minutes, for example. So that would be the same. The thing is, though, that people sign up for platforms. They stay on platforms because of TV shows. That is something that makes them come back and back and back. And there's a new season and you want to come back for that. And a film is a one-off. And that's how the platforms look at films. It's just a one-off. You've seen it and then you don't want to see it again.
Yeah, I think that's certainly the Netflix model of...
Yeah,
yeah, of course they've got films on there. They're backing films in a different way. But it's more about the next season of House of Cards to keep the subscriber subscribing. I guess.
And all these local platforms are just copying Netflix.
James Curzon has quite an interesting model, doing day and date, sort of taking a risk. Does that maybe explain a little bit about how it works? Is it working? Are people actually?
Well, in the UK, we sort of have, I think, it's not like France where we have sort of legislation enforcing a chronology. So a lot of the films that we release, the multiplexes, so outside of the independent circuits, have basically kind of given up the ghost on foreign language films. I mean, one of our multiplex circuits is programmed by a computer system now, so they're not gonna be playing an Aki Kaurismäki film. So we do the vast majority of our releases day and date on a premium VOD service, which is of our own creation. And the VOD market, the future is unwritten, but I will say that these films are more accessible now than they've ever been before, and that is a positive thing. Whereas when we were, I am as guilty as anyone of fetishizing 35mm, but the reality is, when you're releasing a film like Once Upon a Time in Anatolia, if you were still dealing with 35mm prints, you wouldn't be going on 35 screens in your second week of release because you just can't afford to pay for 35 prints. There's pros and cons to the digital revolution in terms of, it's a variety of issues. But accessibility has improved, and I think in the long run that's got to be a good thing, because you can be, living on a remote island off the coast of Scotland and watch a film the day it's released when you've read a review about it, and that has to be some kind of positive thing, right? Because we're all trying to grow film culture, we're all trying to encourage cinephilia, and in order to do that, people need to see the films somehow, some way, and if they're, if it's not on a kind of legitimate VOD service, they're just going to pirate it. Yeah. And studies show that people actually do prefer to go down the legal route if given the option. Yeah. So you kind of have to give them the option. It's just like, this is the world we live in. It's over. There's no point like pretending piracy doesn't exist. Yeah. It's over. It's happened, and we have to adapt. There's like two stories in life. Creatures that adapt and creatures that don't, and the other one is extinction. So you can look at the music industry as an example of an industry that failed to respond quick enough and died on its arse.
This is a cheery Scandinavian
sorry, I keep staring at
the
clouds and thinking dark thoughts.
Are there any other questions? Annika's got a question.
Interesting to hear from all of you how you have adapted to survive in today's difficult marketplace for cinema going for art house films. I mean, I know Lumiere, you're acquiring much more TV drama, less feature films. Other distributors are buying the cinema to have a beautiful window to actually be able to show the film. So I'd like to know what.
How's everybody adapting?
Our main focus is cinema. So we look at our revenues and see that the main part of our revenues comes from the cinema. So DVD and home entertainment is maybe 20 or 25%. VOD is less than 10%, and TV is depending if it's happened or not. It's quite a lot, but more for the producer or the world sales and not for us. So we try to do our best with our theatrical release. So and every euro we spend there, that is a good euro, and we try to save these special place for screening films as long as we can.
Apart from the festivals which we do, we have in our company, it may be quite specific, but we have like 2 film critics who works as art directors. They help choose the films for acquisitions, and they write about the films, and they have their own TV show. They work with a film school in Prague, and they really make a big effort to, like, we have a special screening with introductions. They even travel outside of Prague to give introductions. We try to build a good relationship with the journalists. So like, and we do a lot of events, not only festivals, but for regular film premiere as well. Like for example, when we did I, Daniel Blake, it won Palme d'Or, but nobody gave a damn in Czech Republic about Cannes. And I think our CEO is the only one who deeply cares. So we invited over Dave Johns, who's a stand-up comedian as well, and we had him for 3 days in Prague. We organized a stand-up gig, which sounds ridiculous because I, Daniel Blake, it's a drama, but it worked really well. It was 2 separate events. We got supported by British Council, like they invited their group of people. We were able to target through that a lot of expats living in Prague, because the film didn't resonate too well with the audiences. So we go through we walk the extra mile with the events and communication with a certain group of people in order to spark the word of mouth we're talking about here.
Any other examples of how you're adapting?
We are heavily focusing on production, really growing our production department, because when you produce or co-produce, you can keep all the rights and keep total control of your territory. And it's also, I mean, we happen to be based in Belgium, which is an extremely interesting country for co-production because of all the good tax incentives and fundings. So that helps. We also, I think in the future market, you have to be either where the makers are or where the consumers are. I think everything in between is insecure at the moment, and distribution in 3 years will not look the way it looks right now. So what we are doing is that we're really investing in our digital distribution. We have just launched an EST, electronic sell-through platform for TV shows in the Benelux, and that is the first one in the Benelux.
And that's branded as
LumiereSeries.com, yeah, and we will add films there later as well. But since there are so many opportunities for films already, like iTunes and Google Play and all the local ones, we didn't have an on-demand platform for TV shows yet. That did not exist in the Benelux. So we just started it ourselves, and I'm looking into all kinds of other digital possibilities to, well, get that relationship to our consumer back and not just be the middleman. Vladimir?
Yes. We, in fact, for us, we stayed focused on the theatrical release. but trying to experiment and find different case of possibilities. I mean, you can release a small documentary based with a strong topic. You can release it without a big P&A, and it can find its own economy. So we try to, or it can be a film with a bigger cast and so on and so on. Animation film also, like school screening. So we try really to go into different ways, to not take risk everywhere at the same point. And I would say, as the market, as you said, is changing and becoming very competitive, we really try to. We have another look on the acquisition. It's now, even if we like a film, if it's just, I would say, a drama, if we don't, or if the subject is dealing with topic very difficult, like disease, death of babies and whatever, we know that with the society changing, much more conservative, it will be a problem for the theater's programmation. So there is all the time example to show the opposite, but it can be something. We change our view in terms of acquisition also. We are much more selective, not on the quality of the film, because there is a lot of great films, but you feel that if you just buy it, you cannot do anything as a distributor to introduce it correctly. So this is a way to do.
So maybe not taking as many risks.
No, I would say we take more risk,
More risks.
but on things we really believe in. It's you have to take risk anyway. As I said, like in France, we have numbers of distributors. So it's, and sometimes people are doing direct deal with platform or broadcasters. So you cannot just stay on your seat and wait for a good title. It means to work on script, to travel, to meet people, to sometimes to try to fail and whatever. But and also really to speak with the theater's exploitant, with the audience, to see the feedback, why a film as a Rams could have been a success, because on paper it's totally not evident. So it's just to be aware of everything changing and what things are doing. So,
James, you talked a bit about sort of marketing outside the box. Is there any other?
Yeah, I mean, I think sort of one of the most successful things is focusing, like you said, on events. And events are becoming more and more important in today's marketplace. Audiences, they kind of want to reinvigorate that sense of going to the cinema as being like a night out, some kind of sense of a show. And I think particularly when you're selling sort of slightly more difficult things. So one of the things we did when we were doing the Tarkovsky touring program was trying to find sort of source speakers, not necessarily even from the film world. So we were looking at, so we got like authors like Will Self and Jeff Dyer, who have their own following, to introduce the screenings, and those screenings all sold out because they're kind of these high-profile advocates of incredibly long and difficult films. But that's something that's, you know, more and more what I'm sort of trying to think about. Obviously, an event is, you know, a contained thing, and you're limited to the screen capacity, but it does generate word of mouth. Like, you know, I think it's fantastic doing a stand-up gig with Dave Johns. Obviously,
simulcast it.
Yeah, all those people are having a good time and they're telling their friends, and then there's a higher chance that their friends will go and see the film in question. So that is, you know, one of the real kind of success stories. And yeah, it's a case of, you know, with the proliferation of digital platforms, kind of thinking about how can, beyond the film itself, we make the theatrical experience, you know, an experience. Even though, you know, for me, the film is the event, but that's not an opinion everyone
so
shares.
old-fashioned. Yes. Stina, did you have a comment?
To follow up that, how important would it be for you, and how often do you manage to get talents from the film? Yeah. And should they come before the premiere or for the premiere, or? Yeah.
It makes a huge difference.
Yeah, the question was about talents coming into the territory.
I understand they're getting so busy, so it's difficult even to also to get them almost for the world premiere at the festival. It's sometimes difficult difficult to get the talent to travel.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
You have to convince them.
Yeah,
Or
okay,
maybe
it's
it should
important.
be in the contract of the.
What I like about what we do with a lot of our TV shows is that there's always an international premiere in the domestic country, and they invite people from all over the world there. So we send journalists to Sweden or Norway, and there's a junket there, etc., etc., and that helps already. So if it's not possible to send your talent to the actual country, maybe that would be an idea. But yes, I agree. It helps so much to get talent over. It means the world. Yeah.
It means the film has to be sold before the premiere.
Yeah.
And with press too. I mean, with press,
Yeah,
it makes such a difference.
It's not only that it's sold before the premiere. That's the PR for press junkets that you can do wherever you want. And we send the press or the critics to Norway. Sometimes it's more interesting than to have them in a hotel in Berlin. So, but for the premiere tour, that's very important to have talents and directors there for a week or for 2 weeks in 20 different cities, and that's very important.
And how is your experience? Is it easy to get the Scandinavian talents, or and also do you get support from the embassies? Because I still don't think it's any of the Nordic countries giving distribution support to India. So is it
in general, I think it's easy. It's maybe not so easy with Roy Andersson because he's not the youngest man, and we are very glad if we have him for 1 or 2 days. But Dagur Kauri we had for 1 week and 20 cities after that.
We have a question up there.
Yeah, my question is quite particular, but when you're talking about talent and visit from talent, and several of you mentioned the Norwegian director Hans Petter Moland, and earlier today, Marika, you were talking about you may have an advantage as a distributor when you release an adaptation that is already known in the book market. Yeah. And then I'm curious to just hear your thoughts on the potential of his upcoming project, because looking apart from the remake that he's doing in the US of In Order of Disappearance, his next project will be Out Stealing Horses, which is an adaptation of a fairly famous Norwegian novel, probably one of the most important novels released after the Second World War in Norway, and it was a New York Times bestseller and it won several of the main literary awards. It's 15 years ago, so I'm not sure it has any meaning in the market still, but his name as an author, Per Pettersson, and the combination with an author that seems to be have a name also in your markets. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on it. And it's a period drama, but also too many readers, a well-known book.
Do you think that sort of a book that won prizes 15 years ago, is that going to help an audience now? Maybe they'll re-release the book, maybe...
Well, it depends how popular it is in our territories, obviously, so that's something that we need to look into, yeah. But yeah, the combination of an author and a book...
When you have a book that you can, the readers will travel to go to theaters in more general terms, like a film like Uwe, and you have a book out that's well known. That's a good selling point.
Definitely.
I think we're almost out of time. I wanted to end, I mean, we've talked, did you want to say something else? Yeah?
Yeah, before, I think that it would be good to finish what Stine has launched is actually what can be done on a film fund level to support maybe...
Do you need a distribution support funding that...
What they would need.
Yeah, what do you need? But you're saying it's pretty easy, they're coming anyway. I mean, I guess anybody could always have extra funding to...
That's what you mentioned.
Yeah.
We have problems if the domestic release is too early. So if it's and then that means that the DVD release in Norway or Sweden is on the same date when we release theatrical, and that's too early.
You can just say like we had support on. From Norway Embassy in France for the 2 animation films we released, and it's so it's really nice. and for sure it's not making the difference. Like we're not going to buy a Norwegian film or Scandinavian film because of the because of the little support. But it's the case for there is a support for German films, for Swiss film, and so on. If you really buy the film just for this, it means that you don't really believe for the release. It's more like a tricky deal, which is not the case when, for example, for the animation films, the P&A is more than it's like 150, or it can go over. So it doesn't make sense to just think with this point. After it's, for example, for us. We try to. It's not easy for foreign animation films to bring press to make any critics, but the director, the producer will join the premiere in France. It's small things. It doesn't make everything. It's not as for art house film, but in a way, it's we try to do everything possible. In fact, to make the film become popular. And also, it's a way also to work with the production. It's as it's France, most of the time it's important country for the directors to introduce his film and so on. So sometimes we can lose money on it. It's not very useful, but it's in the deal. It's a pleasure also to meet people. So.
Can I just say, Stina, I actually think that you should educate all the other institutes, because we get the best support from Norway always, and also the Norwegian embassies are fantastic when it comes to support. What I would like to do more with is, for example, in Holland we have the Swedish Chamber of Commerce, and they have a network of Swedish-Dutch companies that could be interesting for us for partnerships, sponsorships, etc. I think that could be something to look into, to set up more, to get all these organizations, all these companies more into our content, and explore new ways of doing business.
That's something the embassies could help with to get the overview at least.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. But I think you clearly have your ammunition from what they've said, that you need that talent there to help launch these films. It is a challenging time. I think we can all recognize that things are changing very quickly. But I just wanted to end on a positive note and just ask you what you're excited for the future, either Scandinavian film or your business. I'll start. I'm just really excited by the quality of films we're seeing from Scandinavia. I mean, The Square winning the Palme d'Or. We've got Borg McEnroe going to open in Toronto. I hear it's fantastic. I just think there's a real richness of filmmaking coming out of here that is good for everybody as film lovers. Anything that excites you about the future?
I'm really looking forward to seeing a version of Borg McEnroe where they've put the tennis balls in the final scene, because I've only seen a working cut where there was no tennis balls. Which proved quite a sort of avant-garde experience.
That's the Roy Anderson.
It was a bit like the end of, Blow Up or something. So I'm really excited to see the finished version of Borg McEnroe with tennis balls, and because as much as I enjoyed that version, it was surreal. But yeah, it's great.
Fourth season of The Bridge. Sorry, last one.
Yes, we have a new Lars von Trier film coming in the next year. We must all be excited about that. What's exciting you, Adamir?
Many things. It's always like to discover new directors, to get surprised when you're. You can watch, even if you're like in a jury of a festival or whatever. You can watch a couple of very depressing films, and suddenly you have one making you happy, and you feel that you really like your job and you want to do again, even if it's not easy nothing easy. So, I mean, it's. I think to be a distributor, it's you need to stay excited all the time, anywhere you go home. And yes.
Yeah. I would agree. It's a very, very exciting job we have, and there are a lot of changes, and we have to adapt to these changes. And in addition, we have the privilege to watch good films. Yeah, that's our business.
I'm excited privately for our upcoming project because we have decided to highlight comedies from all over the Europe, because some people say humor doesn't translate, but I don't believe that, and we would like to enhance and put more marketing strengths into releasing lesser known European comedies in order to like make the laughs tear the borders, you know. So that's my excitement.
Okay, that's a good thing.
Festival or just the distribution?
We would like to put another festival together.
Fun, we'll be there. Thank you so much for all your expert opinions and knowledge, and thanks to Gita and especially to Christine and Europa Distribution for having us here today, and thanks for smart questions from the audience, and I think we've thanked everybody in the room now, so thank you so much for coming.